Robert Williams is traveling with the team to Brooklyn. Does that mean he's going to play in this series, game 3 or game 4? Plus, Grant Williams was shooting really well in game 2, but that's not the real reason why he had a great game. And we're going to give some love to Ime Udoka and his intimate knowledge of Kevin Durant right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine and your first listen every day. This show is Monday through Friday, and this week, special bonus, Saturday post-game. It'll be late, but it'll be a post-game podcast after Game 3 of the Celtics-Nets series, which they lead 2-0. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get this podcast. It's free. It's available everywhere. It's available on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's Casual Friday, t-shirt, hat. Let's go crazy. Just have some fun with it. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I was one of the media voters for the Celtics 75th anniversary team, and I am in attendance for all of these playoff games, watching the Celtics beat the Brooklyn Nets, and doing it in a bit of a variety of ways, in a fun kind of defensive exhibition. So much to break down. And today on this Friday podcast, I'm bringing in Tom Westerholm, who is also wearing a hat and who is trying to catch up to me on, well, better mustache, no beard. I've got the beard game. I feel confident in my Greek fisherman beard game going on, but I'm like loving the mustache, Tom Westerholm.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make it a thing. Also, I'm a little insulted at the idea that hat and T-shirt is Casual Friday.
I know it's your uniform.
That's all I do, man.
I know that's your uniform. I mean, I do the regular podcast day, so I mean, I don't know. I just whatever. Yeah. To me, the hat is the casual part. Like I don't know.
Yes.
I got my 401. I got my 401 representing Rhode Island on the hat.
Yeah.
Growing up in Pawtucket and everything, but you know, you
got whatever's on this hat that I got on that I got at Goodwill, but it's a good one.
It's a yellow hat. It's a mustard yellow hat with a brown patch,
like a brownie, like a brown one. Yeah.
It's a brown leather patch.
Yeah,
is it leather?
Yeah. It's got like a mountain on it and stuff.
Mountains are very on brand for you. Mountains are very on brand for you.
I think so. Yeah.
That's all right. In this show,
it also works with the mustache. Anyway,
yeah, no, I love the look. I mean, I know I look like I'm going duck hunting, but I also have like this kind of like cosmic record shirt going on that just kind of does a weird thing on video. So it's not quite like it's fake duck hunting. It's I guess we're both posing a little bit. You've got like fake normal going on.
Yeah.
You know, which I love. You're like, because we all know that you're not normal.
Yeah, it's just
that's not the. If I'm putting a list together of descriptors for Tom Westerholm, normal is not in the top 5.
I remember one time my son showed up with you were hanging out and he had a toy snake and you were just like you could not fathom that he had a toy snake, and I thought it was the most normal thing in the world, and that was the moment that I was like, I am weird. Okay.
Yeah. Snake, no problem.
Yeah, I was thinking he's got a snake. I don't know what you want.
Well, there's no place for normal here. I keep it, a little straight laced, but whatever. That's fine. I love expression. I love. In fact, the Emerson logo, the Emerson motto, Emerson College, my alma mater, is what is it? Expression necessary for evolution or something. This is we're a very artsy fartsy school. We're very very liberal arts, it was a great place for me.
Nice.
Okay, so let's get into some basketball here. Later on, we'll talk about Ime Udoka. He continues to be asked about his intimate knowledge of the Brooklyn Nets. But every time he's asked, I can understand why. Every time he's asked, he kind of gives a little bit more, gives a little bit more. He's basically saying, like, yeah, I basically know these guys, which is an interesting wrinkle to this whole thing. Second segment, Grant Williams. Grant Williams and his I focused in the post-game podcast about his shooting, which was clutch. Tom knows I've said this a ton of times. Clutch shooting or clutch plays don't have to come in the fourth quarter. I say this a million times on the podcast. Clutch play doesn't have to happen in the last 5 minutes of the game. Grant Williams' clutch play in the first quarter, spanning into the second quarter, was there, but his play on Kevin Durant was amazing. Tom wrote a story about that. We'll talk about that in the second segment. News of the day. Just get to this right away. Robert Williams is traveling with the team. Tom, whenever somebody is injured, traveling with the team is like the biggest indication of, oh my God, it's happening, GIF. Wednesday was 3 weeks from his surgery.
From the surgery, which is an important distinction.
3 weeks from the surgery.
Not the injury, but the surgery. Yes.
Right. And 4 to 6 weeks is the timeline. So we're entering that like little shaded gray area of, well, he could come back. This is if he comes back early, he's in that time frame.
Yes.
What do you make of him traveling with the team?
Well, predicting injuries is always a fool's game, or predicting returns from that type of thing.
That's why I asked you.
Which is why I get the question. I would say that I think there are 2 games in Brooklyn, and if I were to guess, the first one is probably a no, because Brad Stevens said a bunch of times, like, I'm comfortable with the timeline. Ime keeps suggesting, like, the timeline is pretty good. We think this timeline is, like, pretty accurate. But again, there are 2 games in Brooklyn. So, I think that and honestly, if the Celtics, they have this little cushion, right? Like they have a 2-0 cushion. So maybe they win game 3 and maybe, Rob Williams is like, yeah, no, maybe we'll just, I don't need to be here. Like, I'm here if you need me. But to me, I think it's much more likely that we see him in game 4, that we kind of, if he's coming back early and too, like, him traveling with the team always does kind of feel like that indication, but it also is possible that the Celtics are just kind of like, that after game 3, maybe he maybe was ready, but not quite. And, they're just going to have him hang out in Brooklyn for another day. Like that's plausible too. So, I mean, if I were to just guess, I would guess that he plays game 4, that he and Ben Simmons return together. But I have a tough time seeing game 3, but hey, I don't know. Weirder things have happened. And it sure sounds like everything with his recovery is going just about as well as you could have asked for.
Yep. Everything, no setbacks, no nothing. He's done 3-on-3. He's done 4-on-4, but not practicing with the team. This is the important thing. And it's all about like the framing of he's traveling with the team. There have been no setbacks, and maybe they are just bringing him along for the vibes. Robert Williams brings great vibes wherever he goes.
Good vibes.
Mm-hmm. Brooklyn is a place where I feel like Robert Williams vibes kind of fit.
Yes.
I think Brooklyn's a great place for him. So maybe he just wants.
Which is ironic for a guy from Oil City, Louisiana.
But I just feel like Rob, in having been in Brooklyn and having lived in New York for a while, I can just see Rob just chilling in Brooklyn and be like, yeah, this is kind of cool. But anyway, so yeah, you can bring him in for the vibes and you can say, hey, maybe he's on the verge. And if the Celtics lose game 3, which I kind of expect, you say, if he's on the fence, maybe you push him in for game 4 or whatever, or if he feels better. I guess what I look at it as is I would rule him out for game 3, probably, since he hasn't practiced. But if he goes through a workout and is like, wow, I feel amazing today, then that's why you bring him along, because you're not saying he is going to play,
Right.
but you are saying like, hey, if he's been touched by the hand of God and the knee feels like amazingly better in, one of these, like he wakes up and is like, oh my, wow, this is amazing. Then he could play in game 4. So as much as you want to bring him along and say, hey, we want him for the camaraderie and all of that stuff, like, yeah, but also you also want him to be Rob on the floor. And you're not, if you can't rule it out, then you might as well bring him along and say, hey, what, maybe he'll play.
Absolutely. I mean, look, like they kind of hinted at the beginning of the recovery that like a little early wasn't out of the question. And
Yeah.
look, I think the cool thing about Rob potentially returning is that like we're seeing the Celtics win these games against the Nets, and it's like, yeesh, like they almost lost, that first game. They needed the Jayson Tatum buzzer beater. They almost lost the second game. They needed that fourth quarter rally, and they needed everybody, just kind of get hot at the right time. And you can look at that as like the Nets do kind of screw around sometimes. Like they do kind of throw away games to an extent, and the Celtics do have another gear, but they have a whole another gear when Robert Williams is down. I mean, they are making do. And like they deserve a lot of credit for how they have made do without Robert Williams. But one of the things that we have really learned is the extent to which he matters to this team. Like he makes this team a contender with like a capital C. And whereas right now, what you're looking at is a team where you're like, the way they're playing, yeah, maybe if Chris Middleton misses some time, and yeah, maybe if they get like a favorable, Sixers matchup. But Rob Williams changes that. Rob Williams makes them into the team that's like, oh yeah, this team could make a run if they play well. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Rob coming back because I enjoy watching him play, but also for that reason, like it's like it has been a little weird to watch this team and to try to analyze them when it's like, well, they are missing this incredibly key core piece. Taking 2 games off the Nets without him is really good work, but they are just so much better with him in the lineup.
I think it's kind of wild that Rob is both of the starting 5. Rob might be the most easily replaceable in a lot of ways. I mean, you can't replace Tatum, you can't replace Brown, you cannot replace Al Horford, I don't think. You got Marcus Smart, who you can say, okay, Derek White, but not to the same degree. Rob, I think with Daniel Tice, I guess it's a toss-up between those two.
I don't think I agree with that actually.
What do you say?
I actually think Rob is. I think it goes. I think Rob is third. I think you can't replace Tatum or Brown, but like I think with Horford, I think you get some of what he. I mean, not all of it, but I think you do get some of what he does with Grant. Like right, like Grant does like some of like the floor spacing.
I disagree with that.
And the versatile defense. I just think what Rob brings on the offensive end, where it's just like, okay, I'm in trouble, but there's Rob. I'll just throw it up in the air. Like
Sure.
that kind of thing is huge. And then obviously you get the but I mean, we're also seeing the series where a guy like, I don't know, it's tough, man. They got a good starting lineup.
I mean, I can sit there. We can make the argument Derek White. Now I know Derek White hasn't had the best like statistical series, but you put him in there, he can make some good, obviously defensive plays. He just doesn't see the same things that Marcus Smart does. But regardless of where you rank everybody, I think that the point that I was making is like you can replace Rob to a level, to a degree, with Daniel Tice, and we've seen that is true. You can still, although he hasn't caught a lob, but you can still dump it down to him. You can still give it to him in certain spots, and he'll finish. You can still play your same game,
right,
and he'll do like 55 to 60% of what Rob does. The other 40% is the spectacular, crazy stuff. I really don't think anybody can do what Al Horford does. Al is just such a different. I want to do, if I could take 3 days and just dive into every bit of Al Horford tape and just put together a highlight reel of all of the little things that he does. It just, people don't even realize how awesome he is. Still, Side note, the fake three that looked like a three, even as it left his fingers, but was an actual pass to Daniel Tice from Al Horford, is one of the most. I want to properly capture this because the absolute perfect Al Horford play. Unassuming, you don't realize it, people are going to forget about it. But to fake everybody out to that level, how hard does somebody have to work to fake out an entire team, an entire arena, everybody to the level that Al Horford did and get that, like, that is an amazing play. And it's like so perfectly Al Horford, boring and forgettable, but it's also absolutely amazing at the same time.
And also kind of quintessentially, there's something very quintessentially dad about it, which is very like a Horford thing too. It's just like it's not like a cool pass, right? Like, so, sometimes you'll see guys, like they throw like like behind the back, whatever.
Right.
Smart makes a lot of like cool passes. Yeah, throw it like behind the head, whatever. It wasn't that. Horford would never do that. But what he would do is make it look like he airballed a shot, but it actually was just a pass to Daniel Tice. It was perfect, and it was a phenomenal play, like great vision, and like you said, like unbelievable how he tricked everybody, but also like just looked like an air ball, and it was like a good basketball play.
Absolutely the perfect quintessential Al Horford play. Just oh yeah, oh wow, okay, that was great.
Hey, if I airball, I can get an assist.
Right, and then when he did it, he just gives that little pump, like yes, go. I love it. Al has like the little pump, and then when things go wrong, he's the little clap. He always claps after he misses a shot that he thinks he should have made.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, let's wrap it up. Robert Williams, we think he potentially could be back for Game 4. That's where we are with that. All right. Up next, Grant Williams. Grant Williams is just that Game 2. Speaking of things that you're like, oh, okay, that was pretty good, but oh my God, it's actually a lot better than it seemed.
Yes.
Grant Williams Game 2 was so much better than it seemed. And we'll dive into that next. First, I want to tell you about Truebill. And I know everybody's dealing with this when, pandemic, you've got a few things going on. You sign up for 1 million free trials because whatever. You'll think, well, I'm going to sign up for it. I'll cancel it in 2 weeks or a month or 6 months or whatever, and you forget. Or you've got 1 million subscription services, and you're like, I haven't watched something plus in 8 months. Why am I still subscribing and paying money to this? This is why you need Truebill, because you can put everything together in your Truebill app, and it will take care of all of these subscriptions. The greedy free trial stuff that's designed to get you to forget, and all of the stuff that you've just kind of subscribed to all over the place and have just forgotten just because. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. And with Truebill Concierge, they're there to cancel unwanted subscriptions, so you don't even have to. So we've been told by a bunch of people like Matthew B., who saved $660 on a DirecTV bill that he didn't want anymore. $120 for a SiriusXM bill. Didn't realize he had SiriusXM. And then $840 a year in car insurance. They actually helped him save money on that. So don't fall for the subscription scams. Don't fall for all of the stuff that you sign up for and designed for you to forget. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now, Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show also brought to you by Built Bar, my favorite protein bar that I've ever had. I do like protein bars. It tastes like a candy bar. It's covered in chocolate, but unlike a candy bar or one of the other protein bars are dense. You need to drink like a gallon of water with them. If you're a snacker, you like a candy bar that's like 240 calories plus tons of sugar and all of that stuff. Built Bar, 130 calories on average, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, about 17 grams of protein. So delicious, tastes like a candy bar. You can have it as like a snack. You can have it as a meal replacement, which is great. Sometimes I'm on the run like tomorrow when I'm flying to Brooklyn, and just get up, make a coffee, get out the door, grab a Built Bar. That's going to get me through to where I need to go. Throw a couple in my bag so when I land and I'm starving, I'm not buying crap at the airport. I can have a Built Bar, and it's going to get me through to the next stop. So head on over to built.com, use promo code LOCK15. 15% off every single time. So go sample, go figure it out. Don't feel the pressure to stock up. 15% off every order at built.com with the promo code LOCKED15. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Why not make Locked On NBA your second listen every day? Lots of crazy games going on in the league. Just watched the Minnesota Timberwolves blow a 20-plus point lead in the Memphis Grizzlies. Just at one point, it was a 21-0 run. That's all being covered on Locked On NBA. So check it out. I host the show on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. So we've both, the Pelicans and the Celtics, have plenty to crow about on the NBA show. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. It's free, available anywhere, and it's on YouTube. Let's bring Tom Westerholm back into the fold to talk about Grant Williams, who had an amazing shooting game in game 2. And as I said before, it was a 14-point game in the first quarter. Late in the first quarter, then Grant comes in, hits a 3, another 3. They have the quarter break, comes out, hits a 3 again. Claxton throws a free throw in there in the middle of it. So that becomes a 6-point game. That is clutch to me because it makes a game manageable. That easily could have been a 20-point game at one point. Early on, to get it down to single digits, the Celtics kind of held on and stayed afloat and made their move later on. So clutch shooting, but also the defense. And Tom, you wrote the story, you tweeted out the video. Grant on Kevin Durant. I'm sure KD is ready to punch Grant Williams square in the nose because like everywhere he goes, Grant is like right there. And Grant is a solid dude, hard to move, and everywhere it seems like KD goes, there's Grant in front of him, showing the numbers right there and making it very difficult for him to catch.
Well, and if there's one thing we know from Grant's teammates, it's that I think Grant can be a little annoying. like, I think, and I think he likes to talk a little bit. He likes
Tiny
to,
bit.
well, just a little bit. So, I mean, we aren't privy to the conversations that Kevin Durant and Grant Williams are having, but I actually wonder if they're getting like if Grant is kind of scaling back exactly what he says to Kevin Durant because I think he is
I
very
would like
clearly.
to think, sorry, but I would like to think that like people in the locker room are like, Grant, I know you like to talk, but for God's sake, don't talk crap to Kevin Durant. Just go play him, please.
Yeah, that would be the smart thing to do. And look, I mean, Grant is defending him really well as anybody can be expected to defend Kevin Durant. Like, it's very clear that what Ime Udoka, has kind of decided is like, give up fouls. I don't care. Like, just play him aggressively. If he goes to the free throw line 20 times, he goes to the free throw line 20 times. It's fine as long as he's shooting, I mean, goodness, 4 for 17 or whatever he was, on Wednesday. And Grant's a big part of that. He does make it hard for Durant because he is so physical, he is so strong, and he is really hard to move. The clip that I tweeted out that you referenced was like, it wasn't even like a real play. It was just Durant was trying to get free at the top of the key, and he just literally had to chuck Grant Williams off of him, like shoves him
In the chest.
almost an
Easily could have been an
elbow.
offensive foul.
Yeah. I mean, it was an offensive foul, and like it's almost like he elbowed. It's almost like he's like throwing an elbow. Look, and like Grant. You could look at that two ways. You could look at that as Grant Williams is getting like really getting under Kevin Durant's skin, or you could look at it as like Grant is just a hard dude to move, and Kevin Durant had to really propel himself forward to do it. And I think both ways it speaks to what Grant can do on the defensive end. Like both ways, it's like this guy is he's a good, effective defender. I think I wrote on boss.com. I think there's so many little things that he does in it almost reminds you of Marcus Smart, right? Where there's all these little winning plays. Like you watch him on the offensive end, he gets in and he boxes out a lot of the time. And, he might not get the offensive rebound, but he might make it so that the ball bounces away to somebody else. Or, he boxes out early. And a guy who, there was one play where Derek White was driving to the hoop and he boxed out Kevin Durant early in the play. And what that did was it prevented Kevin Durant from helping onto Derek White, who then, got to the free throw line, got fouled because he had a good lane to the hoop. And it's like all these little things that Grant does that they're just winning basketball plays. Like you can see how he impacts, the Celtics positively on the floor. If you watch him, kind of moment to moment, it's a lot more than shooting 100% from the field. It's a lot more than than being in the corner office or whatever it is. There's just a lot of stuff to Grant Williams' game that doesn't always show on the use the old cliche. It doesn't always show in the box score, but it is really effective. Though. Yeah, it is. That's the best way to describe it.
What do you want to say? That's true. It doesn't, but that's where basketball games are won. Basketball games are won in between the lines in the box score. Like obviously Jayson Tatum could go out there and score 60 and they will win the game. But in these playoff games, that's where these little slogs, and it's so hard. Like you said before in the last segment, it's hard to analyze where this team is. You don't have Rob, you don't have the full power of the Celtics, but this kind of like almost like boxing match. This just get into each other's bodies, and people are already bleeding. We're in 2 games in, and people are bleeding, and
sometimes literally.
Seriously, like Jaylen in game 1 will just the stuff that Grant is doing and the versatility that he provides. Because not only is he doing that, but he's also switching on to Patty Mills. He's switching on to Kyrie. He's doing things where he's able to be physical because he is a big, strong dude. He's a strong dude. And KD runs into him, and it's like a video game. Every time KD runs into him, that little meter, the health meter, drops a little bit. And I said in last night's podcast, I'll repeat it here. I think Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett too, but
good defender,
great defender. No, Kevin Durant is getting worn down. I think by the end of these games, especially, Durant is just beaten to hell. And I use the example of when Jayson Tatum is blocking Durant's shot. Like Tatum's a good defender. And he's long and he can jump and all that, but no one blocks KD's shot. And Jaylen, Jayson's gotten him twice, and both of them I think were at the end of games. Grant is part of that. Like you can give Grant, if it was almost like in NFL where there's a half a sack, you can almost give him half of that block because Grant was part of the just pound, 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 and when the legs just aren't there down the stretch. That's when you see, oh, Boston Celtics are down 10. Oh, Boston Celtics are down 5. Oh, now they're up 5.
Right.
Oh, now they're up 12. That's where this happens. And the Celtics, KD said it after. Everywhere I look, there's somebody there. Al Horford's trying to hit me. Other guys are trying to hit me. And we are like looking at this. Grant's hitting him. It may be infuriating. It might be annoying. But I'll tell you, whatever it is, it's just tearing him down bit by bit. And I think it has a cumulative effect going into like game 3. Just like I said, the video game, as you keep going towards the big bosses, your health meters don't go all the way back up. Like KD's health meter doesn't go back up to 100.
Right.
It'll go like it was down at like 30 and now it's going back up to like 70 and it's going to wear down even quicker. And then game 4 with only 1 day off, that's going to wear down even faster than that. And Grant is part of that, just beating the crap out of him. I think he's just been playing really, really well and doing a lot of unsung things.
I agree. And I think it's going to be This is a future podcast point, but I think it's at least interesting to touch on now is that Celtics are going to have some interesting decisions with Grant to make after the season because he's eligible for a rookie extension, and I will be very interested to see how that goes. Because here's the thing about Grant: he got so much better because he worked his tail off this last offseason. And I think there's still room for him to grow. I think that there are a lot of things that he can add to his game. You could not offer him an extension, but you could also maybe get some value there because I think, Grant is a worker. Like I think that there's, he's proven now that you have to close out hard to him. So what's the next step there? Work on your handle, work on your passing, work on attacking closeouts, work on all that stuff. Like there is a lot of room for Grant to grow as a player. And I think even when he was struggling, one of the things that you talk to Brandon Bailey, you talk to any of those guys who were on the staff, in previous seasons, Grant was just tireless watching film, learning all these little things that are now really paying dividends in ways that they didn't always in previous seasons. But this dude works like crazy, and I'll be really curious to see what else he adds whenever this offseason hits. I think that the Grant Williams progression is going to be really interesting, and the resulting extension talks will also be kind of interesting.
So I just want to make sure, like Grant, I remember we're coming up on a year, July. We're talking about, oh man, this dude skipped summer league. What's that? What's that about? Dude. Remember that was a storyline.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he skipped summer league. Man, we're gonna have to see. Hey, look, I recall probably saying on this podcast, like, we'll see if that was a good decision or not.
Yeah,
it was a good decision.
That was fine. It was absolutely fine.
Worked on his game and very smart.
Yep.
I think for like Grant portrays himself as a goofy guy, and I think,
and he is a goofy guy, to be clear.
He is, but I also think he likes to play up the goofy guy persona. I think he loves to play up the goofy guy persona because deep down, he's still, you don't want to F with me. Like, I still think you can't be out there manning up Kevin Durant and being like, look at me, I'm a goofball. Oh, I'm just going to hit you. No, you go out there, and when you're hitting Kevin Durant, you're hitting Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And if Kevin Durant's going to talk to you or push you, you got to be like, in that moment, be like, yeah, what? Like you have, like, I think there's a very crafted goofball image rooted in truth, but also played up for all of us to see. And deep down, he's in there doing his work. He's out there ready to fight. He's out there like, you want to throw? I'll throw. Like he's willing to do that stuff. But I will give him a ton of credit. I remember specifically earlier this season, I can't even tell you what game it was. Somebody drove baseline and he came over and fouled. It might have even been a take foul. I remember Al taking him aside and just explaining about verticality and all of that stuff. And you watch this game and you watch him ever since then, he's done a great job of being vertical. There's a credit to Bruce Brown for finishing this play, but he came over late, rotated over and jumped and met Bruce Brown in the air. And Bruce Brown was jumping forward and he just stopped dead. Great finish by Bruce Brown. But Grant's doing a fantastic job there and against Durant. I think the key against Durant is hands up, hands out, puffing your chest out and showing the refs your hands. Showing the refs, my hands are up. I'm not pushing. I'm not hand checking. I'm just standing there. I'm claiming my space. And as long as he does that, then that's fine. It's almost like the defensive version of the Daniel Tice seal from a couple years ago. As long as you have your hands up, you're cool. And he's doing that, and no amount of complaining from people on the Brooklyn side about how Durant is being defended. Stand there, hands up, and if he wants to go through you, he can go through you. And you're going to let some of that go, or you're not going to let some of it go, but defender has claim to that space. And every time Durant has to push Grant out of the way, that health meter goes down just a little bit more.
It's funny that you brought up fourth wall break here, to a mild degree, but I submitted my story for Boston.com before we started recording, and it went live as we were recording. So you did not read it yet, but it's funny that you brought up the Daniel Tice seal, because I quite literally like compared a different aspect of Grant's game to that, where the screening that he does is remarkably similar to that on the offensive end in a lot of ways. Because like, you noticed it. If there was a play where, for instance, he was screening Nick Claxton away from the play, which allowed Jaylen Brown to go directly at Kyrie Irving and to get an easy, pretty contested, but a layup without any rim protection, because Grant had set the screen and then it rolled to the basket and done that thing that guys do where it's like, I'm not doing a moving screen, I'm rolling. And actually he's just like carrying Nick Claxton with him. And like Grant is really good at that. I think that the pretty good screeners put themselves in the right position and stand there. And then the elite screeners, the really great screeners, really do a great job of walking the line of legality. And Grant walks the line of legality as a screener very well. Often oversteps it and doesn't get called for it. But like, again, that's what the good ones do. So
carrying on a Celtics tradition.
Carrying on a Celtics
Kevin
tradition.
Garnett to Al Horford down to Grant Williams
to Daniel Tice, now to Grant Williams. It was unrelated to his defense, which I agree on everything that you said, but also it's just funny that we both used the Daniel Tice seal.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Shout out to the Daniel Tice seal.
That's
me.
That's me.
That's what it is, man.
Yeah. All right. So that's Grant. Grant. Just side note as I wrap it up. I love having Grant around, man. That dude is so funny. I love that he plays up the goofball stuff. I know that there's like it's 90% true, but I also know that's 10% fake.
Totally.
All right. We'll come back. We'll talk about another guy who's making the impact, and that's Ime Udoka, who is doing a wonderful coaching job in this series so far. It's only 2 games, but so far, so good. We'll talk about that in a second, but first, let me tell you about Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of the fancy $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. I know the dilemma about buying sunglasses. You want to buy those big fancy ones, but you always lose them and you always break them. So you want to go to Shady Rays because they've got the polarized lenses, the well-constructed durable frames, premium high-end finishes, but they also have their insane protection program, which includes lost and broken protection on every pair. So you can get a great looking pair of sunglasses, and if you lose them, they'll replace them no matter what happened. That's the amazing part. So give them a try. If you don't love them, you pay nothing. It's as simple as that. And you want to be doing business with companies that do good. They donate 10 meals for every purchase there to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. And exclusively for Locked On listeners, head to shadyrays.com. Use the code LOCKEDON. You're going to get 50% off, 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKED ON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, and they're backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. All right, Tom, Ime Udoka has been asked a ton of times about his intimate knowledge of the Brooklyn Nets. And the thing about Ime, and I remember talking to him, and he said it in other interviews, he's had a ton of stops in the NBA, right? He's been a journeyman. He's been an assistant in San Antonio and Philly and in Brooklyn before coming to Boston. He has talked about, I've taken notes everywhere I've gone. So he's just continuously taken notes. And in his Thursday media availability, he kind of talked about that. We just talked for a while about guarding Kevin Durant. And he's like, you know what? From the San Antonio days when he was in OKC, from him playing in Golden State and then coaching him in Brooklyn, you assemble a sort of dossier on this dude, and you're like, yeah, I've been watching him for a long, long time. Let me just bust out this 3-ring binder of all of my Kevin Durant notes. And he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, PJ Tucker last year just pounded the crap out of him in that series against Milwaukee and wore him down. Let's just take some notes from PJ Tucker. It's like someone who has traveled the country just eating and cooking and is like, okay, now I got all these recipes. Let's cook over here. And he's putting together this defensive game plan against Durant and against the Nets. And not just his time in Brooklyn, but his time in the league. He's assembled all of this knowledge, all of these notes, and he's in his first year as a head coach. He's like, okay, got it. Here's the plan. Let's go. And it's working.
It's, I mean, it's very impressive. He's a very impressive coach. There's, you like, I think early on, you're always kind of hesitant to be like, well, he's doing well. Let's see how it works out. It's like, no, this dude's really good. And I think, that the Kevin Durant thing is such a perfect example of it. Yeah, I think your binder analogy is really good. Like, there's no way to stop Kevin Durant except that it has happened before. Like, there have been things that have worked in the past, even if they only work for a little bit. And I think kind of, the thing about superstars, right, is that, like, if you throw things at them a bunch of times, they'll figure it out, right? So, like, I would expect that at some point Kevin Durant will probably start to figure things out, and then we see what else Ime Udoka has in his binder for Kevin Durant, and that, I think, is where it's going to be extra interesting. But I think that's the mark. That's one of the reasons why Ime has been so good for the Celtics this year is he is, he clearly has a he's a very one-track mind. He's clearly, like, been very much like, all basketball all the time for a long time, and that is paying huge dividends. And I do also wonder, like, these are guys that he used to be an assistant coach for. So I wonder how they feel about just knowing, like, dang, was Ime thinking about how to stop me this whole time that he was allegedly, like, trying to win with me? And the answer, kind of, yeah. I mean, the NBA is a cutthroat business. Like, that was probably on Ime's mind at all times when he was watching Kevin Durant before. It was like, okay, if I get another job, how would I stop this guy? Which also works for Kevin Durant, because then he can coach Kevin Durant on, like, hey, here's ways that you can fix your game. But yeah, I don't know. What a weird sport.
It is a weird sport. Like, Will Hardy wants to be a head coach, right? Yeah. I assume he wants to be a head coach. And so Jayson Tatum's, like, working with him and everybody. What if next year Will Hardy is coaching the Hornets? Right. And you're like, oh, okay. Now you know every little bit about me, but you have to trust this guy to be, to have your best interests at mind. So, like, he's trying to coach you and make you the best, but also he's like, this might be a potential weakness that I could exploit when I'm coaching against him in a playoff series next year as head coach of the Hornets. I do want to point out, like, when you said when you do the same thing over and over again with a superstar, they tend to figure it out. If you follow Steve Jones at Steve Jones 20 on Twitter, Steve is amazing.
Oh,
He's
good.
a former assistant coach, breaks down video. Like, I feel like I know, like, basketball and I can break down some stuff. I'm, like, looking at Steve and I'm like, oh, I learn from Steve, like, all the time. He is so far above and beyond, like, well beyond anything I can hope to be. So he did a great job of recognizing immediately a play with a pick and roll with Durant and Andre Drummond, and Daniel Tice is coming up. Now they're coming up to the level of the screen. In one instance, it kind of worked. The next play down, they do it, and Durant's like, oh, yeah, boom, pocket pass. Durant, and then Drummond turns around and whips it over to Seth Curry for a three-pointer. Like, play to play. That's how smart. That's how amazing these guys are. Like, it would take me an hour of watching these film. Oh, okay. Next time you should probably try a pocket pass. Durant's like, yeah, I processed that in like 30 seconds. And he just said, oh, up to the touch. Boom. There it is. There's my pocket pass. There's the lane for that pass. And then boom, boom, 3-pointer. So you have to change things up. You have to understand, like, and the other thing that Ime said on Thursday was you got to be willing to sacrifice some things. You got to be willing to say, maybe Goran Dragic hits 3 shots in a row. Maybe Bruce Brown hits a couple of shots in a row. Maybe somebody else, Seth Curry, hits a couple of shots in a row. Stick to the plan. Stick to the plan. And that is hard to do. It's you're out there telling guys like, I know you just got roasted, but stick to the plan. And you hear guys talk about how Ime is very calm at halftime, very self-assured and not panicking, and that's the type of leader that you need. But in a series like this, to have a guy who's very much like, okay, we know that this is going to work. We know that you're going to get injured, but you're not going to get killed. Go out there and do it. And you're like, I don't even really want to be injured by this, but you got to go do it because that's how you're going to beat the Brooklyn Nets. You know you're going to give up some of these shots. Try your best to get out. Don't lose discipline. And I will say, from the beginning of the season to now, getting guys to buy in and getting guys to stay disciplined and say, okay, we're gonna keep rolling with this. And some possessions it's not gonna work, but you keep going, you keep playing hard, you keep sticking to your principles. Most possessions it's gonna work. That's Ime's coaching at play. Those keep going with it, and then it turns into a turnover. And it's kind of fun to see like the volleys on either side, but got to give Ime credit for just keeping these guys on task, blinders on, just keep going, and it just keeps paying off.
Yeah, it's both a microcosm and a macrocosm of the Celtic season
Ooh,
because
macrocosm.
macro, yes. Because in like the micro sense, right? Like, yeah, like, hey, stick to the game plan, keep kind of moving forward, keep trying to keep plugging away, and it's going to work. Same thing is also true of like the way that he coached them, like, season long, right? Is like, okay, listen, we're going to start with the defense. It might not always be pretty at first. You might get roasted a little bit at first, but like, we're getting to the offense. We're going to get to the offense. And they did. And again, to steal a phrase from everybody's favorite team, you just kind of got to trust the process. Like you trust it from, you trust it game to game, and in those micro senses, but you also do it in the macro sense, and that has just kind of been Ime's philosophy, and it's worked really well for him. I also I did want to know with what your comment about like Steve Jones and just like how much we learned from him and how fast these guys process the game. It's a good reminder that like what we're really good at is like writing and like talking,
Yes.
and
Yes.
like we just happen to have chosen basketball. Like we're not, like these guys are a completely different level of like
Yes.
watching the game and understanding the game. It's like we do everything we can, and it's just I'm not going to be an assistant coach. I'm just going to tell everybody that right now.
I often compare myself, like this is the comparison I make. When it comes to basketball, I feel like I'm a high school science teacher.
Yes.
I understand science better than the majority. Those guys are like Stephen Hawking, like astrophysicists.
Yes.
Like I'm sitting here trying to teach you guys, like, yeah, this is how you make a volcano that erupts. And they're like, this is the chemical reaction that makes all volcanoes erupt. I just cannot begin to like explain how smart you have to be. Brad Stevens always blew my mind. Brad blew my mind because it would take me 3 rewatches in a game to see stuff that he talked about in detail in a post game. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? These guys, like to watch Marcus Smart do stuff on the floor and process things. I'm like, what? Like, I really need people to slow it down and like sound out the words and show me the pictures like an elementary school kid. Be like, oh, okay, now I get it. I,
Yeah.
I actually I should probably see myself more as a translator. These
Yeah.
guys are speaking a complicated language, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this into English.
Yeah.
That's probably a more accurate description.
Yeah, and it's like English is my first language, and I'm trying to translate it into English but like this basketball stuff is very much my second language.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought Adam Himmelsbach actually had a really good story over on the Globe where he talked to Marcus Smart about what Smart sees on various plays, and there was one thing that Smart said that like blew my mind. Smart was like, "Yeah, I try to wait until the other guy has jumped before I jump to contest layups." Because then the guy, if he's going up for the layup, he's always going to have to come down a little bit, and then I can contest when he comes down a little bit for the layup. And I was like, you think that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think that so fast? When if I'm playing basketball, I'm just like trying to stay upright and like,
Right.
make threes. Like, what are you talking about? So, I mean, these guys, yeah, I think Stephen Hawking's the right metaphor for them. Like they are basketball players, no basketball, I guess is what we're trying to say.
I know there's a I don't see it as much like in NBA circles or whatever, but I do know that there's a kind of like a dumb jock what's the word I'm looking for? Just the way people think of these guys. To be a professional athlete, you are not stupid. You are not stupid. You might be emotionally immature. There are plenty of emotionally immature people out there, but you're not dumb because it's hard. It's hard, and you got to pick up things like in an instant. You get traded to the Celtics, and they're like, "Boom, here you go. Here's your plays." And you're like, "Okay, sure, I'll have that down by tomorrow." And then adjustments.
You'll at least be able to play me by tomorrow.
Yeah, it's just the level of intelligence at the NBA level. It's just
what we're trying to say is that Ime Udoka is a pretty bright guy.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant. All right. I'm not brilliant because I let this podcast go 50 minutes. I'm gonna get in trouble for this one, but that's all right. It is what it is. And it's a Friday, casual Friday.
Casual Friday. Like, we're wearing hats.
We're wearing hats. That makes it casual Friday. So I want to thank Tom Westerholm and his hat and mustache for joining the show. Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate you.
My hat and my beard will thank you for listening. If you're still here, maybe you've downloaded the show, took it to your car, listened to half on the drive in, half on the way back. I know it's a long one. I think Fridays I just tend to let them go long because it's fun and you have the whole weekend to listen. Although in this instance, I will be back for a Saturday post-game show after the Celtics maybe win game 3 in Brooklyn. If they win that one, then that will make a lot of people kind of crazy. So stick around, subscribe, get your post-game show on Saturday, and still Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's free. It's available everywhere, wherever you want to listen. And if you want to watch, it's on YouTube. Subscribe there. And if you are a subscriber, share the podcast. Tell your friends. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.